film producer, founder of Freedom Force International, author of World Without Cancer, Moles in High Places, The Fearful Master, and The Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin.
Thank you. Boy, what a welcome that is. Thank you so much. I didn't know what to expect today, and I still don't get the idea here. I could hear only some of the introduction back there, but whatever he said probably is a lie. Except the part about throwing something on the wall, well, maybe that. Well, I have a chance to talk on what is my favorite topic today. I talk a lot about the Federal Reserve because that's what people want to know about. It affects their pocket and their future security, and it's got a certain mystery to it, and it's got all the elements of excitement. And before I wrote the book on the Fed, I did one on cancer research and therapy on alternative cancer, and a lot of people are interested in that because it affects them, really, really seriously, and their family and loved ones. So I'm talking about those things most of the time, and occasionally somebody says, "What are you doing nowadays?" Well, I'm working on something called Freedom Force International, and so the topic came up, and the idea was, would you like to present on that? And I said, would I ever? So here I am to talk about Freedom Force. Does anybody here know about Freedom Force yet? One, two, oh my gosh, a lot. Oh, well, I'm among friends then. So if I say anything wrong, please correct me. I sometimes get off the track. You know what they say, getting old is not for sissies. So, but I'll do my best. Okay, I've only got, I guess, about 40 minutes minus about 2 or 3 now, so I better get on with it. I scribbled out some notes here. Just make sure I don't wander too far. And I thought the first thing I would discuss was, what is Freedom Force? Okay, that's pretty logical. Okay, it's an organization of men and women around the world. It's global in nature. And they have... it's almost a brotherhood, I would say. The bond between the members of Freedom Force all around the world, regardless of their nationality, their culture, their race, their religion, regardless of their gender, their economic status, their lifestyle, all of these things, they may vary a lot, but they are bound very closely on what they believe, and more importantly, what they want to see in the future. They want to build a world that fits a common vision, which I'll be talking about in a moment. So it's a group of people, very dedicated, serious people. Every one of you here, I gather from the purpose of this meeting and your response to some of the phrases that were thrown out here today, that you all are, whether you know it or not, brothers and sisters under the skin in Freedom Force. You're part of the brotherhood, whether you know it or not. So let's talk about, okay, that's what it is. That doesn't tell you too much. Why is it? Well, I created it back in, 2002, I think it was. I was at a conference similar to this. Well, not similar, because it was all about money. It was all about how to make money, or make a killing while the rest of the world goes to hell. You know the theme. And so I was invited to speak, and I was one of the early speakers because my job was to scare the hell out of people by telling them what reality was with the monetary system. And then the promoters of the program would come up and say, well, what are you going to do about it? Don't you want to protect your assets and so forth? So that was there to serve a purpose. I knew that, which was fine, because I had a chance to deliver the message, which was important. And somebody in the audience afterwards asked me from the audience, that, well, what do you recommend we do about this? I couldn't believe anybody cared about what we do about it. I mean, about changing it. Just everybody was concerned about how to ride the wave, how to benefit from it and not be destroyed by it. Sort of an internal look, not thinking about the future, or not thinking about, your grandkids and the future and all that sort of thing. So I was really glad. I said, well, I have some ideas on that. I said, I'd be glad to talk to you about it. Take a little while to go through it all. So I said, I understand I have access to a breakout room afterwards. Anybody who wants to hear my views on what we do about it, come on over. We'll talk about it. Well, there was about 50 people that showed up. And I had no idea what I was going to say, so I just started to talk like I am now, as it sort of bubbles up. I said, here's what I think we ought to do. And I said, we should get together, and we should have certain features in this organization, because Lord knows we don't need just another organization. We got plenty of those, and none of them are doing any good. I belong to most of them, And we weren't winning, we were losing, so what was missing? I said, we need to come up with a new idea and answer the question, what is not being done that needs to be done? And that became Freedom Force. We talked about an hour on that, and blow me down is when we went out, somebody stood up and he said, well, I want to become part of it, and he handed me a $20 bill. This was in the Dominican Republic, by the way. So this was truly an international group, mostly Americans and Canadians, but from all over the world, and they all recognized US dollars. And so I got a $20 bill. I had the first dues-paying member of Freedom Force. And a couple of other people stepped up and they said, well, here's $20. Is that okay? I said, yeah, I guess. What'll I do with it? Well, figure it out. So I went back and I had members and I had money in my hands. And now what? We got an organization. That's how it happened. We had an organization. So I had to figure out what we call it, had to get a website, had to put up some literature, and man, it was painful for the next couple of years to take these general ideas that I'm going to be talking about today and actually put it into a working group with members and bulletins and strategies, plans, and all that sort of thing. That's how it came about. And the key to all of my rambling on that is that it was because I felt that there was something missing in the, for the lack of a better phrase, let's call it the freedom movement. Well, what are those things that I saw that were missing? I don't think I need to refer to my notes. If I don't know this by now, I'll never know this. The first thing is that the movement didn't have a creed. The freedom movement, as it existed then and still pretty much does today, is based on negatives, not positives. Most people are driven into the freedom movement because they're feeling the pain of the growing state. It's not because they have some ideal of what would be better, it's just they don't like the way it's turning out. And so they're driven with this negative motivation. They don't have a dream of what it could be like. They just want to be left alone, like most of us, all of us. But they don't have something to define what that is, a creed. Now, all of the enemies of freedom have, they've all written books on it. Karl Marx wrote Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto. He had the dream for what it should be like in the future, the utopia of socialism and communism and so forth. They have a dream, and all their followers dreamed about this better day, and they had a plan, and they knew how to build the system. And we just don't want to be crowded, that's all. We want to be left alone. Adolf Hitler wrote his Mein Kampf. He had a dream, and all of this Nazi movement and the fascist movement that spread over Europe was based upon a belief system. They knew what they wanted. They knew how to bring it about, and we just wanted to be left alone. See? So we were missing this driving force, even in today's elections, People don't vote for somebody. They vote against somebody. It's not that they like what somebody stands for. They just say, the other guy is worse. And that's how we go. And this is something that was missing, and it's still missing. So we got to change that. We have to know what we believe in as well as what we want out from, what we do not want. Most people think that freedom is simply being not in jail. That's their definition, And not in this room, I know, but in most places I go, if I were to ask somebody to stand up and say, what is freedom? They'd say, freedom is freedom. That's it. Not many people can stand up and say, well, this is the essence of freedom, and this, and this, and this too is pretty important, although maybe not necessary in all conditions. They're ready to go. Anybody want to debate? You know? Not many people can do that. It's just, well, I guess it's something we should have. I think it's in the Constitution, isn't it? You know? So, okay, enough of that. That was the first thing we were missing. The next thing we were missing was a path to victory. We had no way to win. Now, what I mean by that is that I'm talking about this thing called power. Power is a very interesting topic. It's a lot like guns. Power is dangerous. Guns are dangerous, you know. Guns are very dangerous. People get killed with guns. You got to be careful with those things. The only thing more dangerous than having guns is not having guns. And power is exactly the same. Power is dangerous. And I remember for the first 200 years of my life, or whatever it was, talking to groups of people about the danger of political power. And I would quote Lord Acton, who said, "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." It's a great phrase. It's fun to quote that one. And I believed it, and it's true, but that's not the end of the truth. It's one of those half-truths. But it was good enough for me for a long time, and I would preach against power. So we must fight against those who have or want power and just dismantle power. And we ourselves must not have any. We must ourselves not have any guns because they're dangerous. And then one morning, literally, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I guess I'd been thinking about it all night in kind of a fitless sleep. And I woke up in the morning, and the sun was just peeking up over the horizon because I could see the daylight from the sky coming in through the window. And I sat up in bed, and I thought, oh, I get it. We lose. We lose because we have no power and no dream or vision of how to acquire power. And so that's pretty interesting, I thought. I should back up. Since I'm not referring to my notes, I mentioned this creed before. So I didn't finish that topic, though, because where do you go with the idea? If you don't have a creed, you have to get one, right? So I started to plagiarize every great thinker I could find in history. And there were plenty of them out there, and many of them were right in the American continent at the time of the drafting of the Constitution, but some of them go all the way back into antiquity. And so I pulled together all of these things that I thought were the element of what we should believe in, the essence of what makes liberty possible, and I put them into something called the Creed of Freedom. And you will find that on the website of freedomforceinternational.org. Easy to remember, but long. freedomforceinternational.org. And you'll find a big section there on the Creed of Freedom, and you'll find 8 elements that I found to be universally present in this battle between what we call collectivism versus individualism. I'll need to back up a little bit on that one. What are we fighting for? Well, I found all of the debate, all elements of the debate in the Western world on political ideology to be focused on 2 main underlying belief systems. You can forget all the words about socialism versus capitalism, communism, Nazism, New Dealism, Republicans versus Democrats, left wing versus right wing, neoconservatives, neo-Nazis, progressives, liberals, conservatives. All these words mean nothing except in the mind of the people speaking those words. They think they know what it means, but they can change on that as the discussion progresses. Means nothing really that you can hang your hat on. You put the little tiniest hat on the hook and it falls off because it cannot stand the weight of argument. You boil it down to the underlying philosophy, and you'll find that it's those wonderful words that were lost to the English language for decades. Individualism on the one side and collectivism on the other side. Those words were commonly used 100 years ago, 80 years ago. When I was reading all these old textbooks and these speeches and these diaries and these treatises that people had written, I found the word collectivism and individualism used a lot. But I know by the time we get to the modern times, you use those words and people give you that blank stare. What's that? Never heard the word, although it's coming back more into the vocabulary lately. I'd like to think I had a little bit to do with that. But it's becoming more used now and more understood. So this is a battle between collectivism on the one hand, and all of these isms that we don't like are variants of collectivism. And the polar opposite on every point are the principles of individualism. We don't have time to go into that, unfortunately, today. It's a very intriguing and rewarding experience to explore those thoughts. You'll find those on the Freedom Force website. There are 8 principles. Just to give you a little brief idea, the origin of rights, do they come from the state or are they built into the individual? Do you have them when you're born? Is it hardware or is it software? You know, that's one of the issues. Which is more supreme, the individual or the group in society? You know, what's the basis? Is there even such a thing as a group? How can the group have rights that are above the individual if the group doesn't even exist? And in fact, the group does not exist. There's no such thing as a group. It's a word concept. It's an abstract idea in the brain. It's a mathematical concept. It means many individuals. Individuals exist. You can touch an individual, but you can't touch a group. It's a concept. Abstract in the mind, like the word forest. Trees are real. Forest is an abstract idea. How can something that's an abstract idea and that doesn't even exist have rights that are above those things which do exist? See? Okay, that just gives you an idea of the wealth of thought and meaning to our personal lives that is contained in the Creed of Freedom. So please take some time and go take a look at it. I know you folks are going to lap it up. I did, and don't forget, none of it's mine. I just stole it from others. It only took me 40 years to put it together, but it doesn't belong to me. They say we don't have any ideas of our own, and I became very aware of that reality when I was putting all this together. So we have a creed, and now we're back to this thing called power. You've got to have power. It's dangerous. You have to design mechanisms for making sure that those who have your power, that you've delegated to them, supposedly, that they are held in line by some means. Now, you can only hold power in line with power. That's the problem, you see. If you've got a group like this, and there are 2 people up here with machine guns, you guess who's going to tell the others what to do? You know, you've got to have the power, and we hate that idea, but it's reality. So the question then is, how do you build a structure where people have this power, but there is another power outside of that that can limit and control them? It's not exactly like this, but it's similar to what our founding fathers did when they created the militia. It's not exactly that, but you understand, they created a state. By the way, they mistakenly, I think, called it a government. Let me get off on that I'll come back to that in a second. But they also created a militia, which was every able-bodied man in the colonies was part of the militia, and he was required or expected to have a gun. Why? Why? Was it to prevent burglars from coming in? No. It was to prevent the state apparatus from getting out of hand. It was a means of last resort, of course. But there always has to be some check outside of this group that you give the power to. The ultimate power has to reside in the individuals in society. So that has to be part of any system you build. Otherwise, you lose. You can spend your lifetime, maybe spill your blood, trying to bring about some reform, but you just replace one totalitarian system with another. How many times has that happened, you know? So we have a motto in Freedom Force. It's stated in Latin in order to give it a little dignity and mystery. I'll quote the Latin and then tell you what it means if you don't already know. Impotentes defendere libertatem non possunt. And that translates into, those without power cannot defend freedom. That's their motto. And that's a major part of what Freedom Force adds to the mix that has never existed before in the freedom movement. But along with that, don't forget, we have to think seriously about how to limit that power. And then we come to down to the creed. We have to step back to the creed. What is the limit on that power? What's the theoretical limit? You have to think both theoretically and also practically. But right now, what is the theoretical limit of power that the state should have? I know many of you could answer that question. But there's only one basic formula that seems to be satisfying to everybody, and that is that if we're talking about the state, notice I'm not using the word government, because I don't think we want government. Why is that? When I say that to people, they think, oh, you're one of those anarchists? I said, well, it depends on what you mean by that word. If you mean chaos, no, I'm not one of those anarchists. But if you're talking about no government, well, yeah, I guess I am. But let's clear the air. Let's use a better word that doesn't trigger the emotions. You know, chaos and anarchy are almost synonymous in the minds of most people. I said, no, we're talking about a system that is not government, but functions in the way we want government to function if we could have our way. Well, what is that all about? So we go back to the assumption that what is the source of the power of government or the state? We'd like to all agree, this is something that very few people would disagree on, is that it comes from the people. The people authorize the state or the government, depending on which word you prefer, to undertake activities and to use the legalized, or to have the legalized use of force against other people. It's just a means of legalizing and putting limits on the force that some group of people can use against others. And we say it's okay. That's all it is. So what do we have as individual citizens? What right do we have, forget the state, just ourselves, to use physical coercion against another person? That's the basic question. It starts there. If we are individualists, what does the individual have a right to do, or why does he have a right to use physical force, lethal force if necessary? And the answer almost is universal, and that is in defense. That's the non-aggressive principle there, hidden in a little manner, but in defense of life, liberty, and property. Nobody, very few people would object if we used physical force against someone if they were trying to kill us, if they were trying to enslave us, or if they were trying to take from us those things which are ours. We fight for that. And so if we have the ethical right to use force for those purposes, only those purposes, I defy anybody to come up with the say, well, you got a right to tell your neighbor what school his kid's got to go to, and you can kill him if he doesn't do it. Huh? Or you can put him in jail if he doesn't, or take his money from him, tax him if he doesn't do that. You have a right to tell your neighbor that he can't open his store on Sunday, right? You can kill him if he does. No, nobody argues that. It's stupid. So then where do they get the idea that they can elect somebody in office and delegate that right to them so that they can do it? Where did they get that power? It didn't come from us. It didn't come from citizens. They invented it. That's the origin of the totalitarian state. That's where they start saying the group exists. The group is more important than the individual, and that is why we can do it, because the group has those rights, even though the individual does not. Baloney, bunk, poo-poo. Okay. You get the idea. These are the things that we believe in, all of the members of Freedom Force, and it's universal across all cultures and nations. As I say, it's the bond that holds people together. And it's the basis of what we like to think of as a brotherhood, and it is the basis, I believe, of building a new world of freedom in the future, is that belief system. Okay, now we go back to the other thing, this power. Well, we have to come to power. How do we do that? We have to have a strategy for that. And what is the strategy to come to power other than getting in the streets with guns? Violent revolution. Is there a strategy? Oh, you better believe there is. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that today we live in a world where our freedoms are terribly restricted, and it looks like the last remnant is going to be snuffed out at the next major terrorist event or some programmed event, economic collapse, civil disorder, get the people nervous and filled with fear and demanding protection. We could lose it all. We're so close to it. Did we get there? Did we get to this point over the years, losing more liberties and freedoms, and getting squeezed into this little box because there was a revolution in the streets? No, it was done politically. It was done through information and propaganda. It was done so that we would yield our freedoms voluntarily in return for something, usually security. And we were led to believe that this was the proper course of action, primarily because we belong to organizations, or we respect organizations, which engineer our thought processes. I'm talking about political parties, media, not only news media, but entertainment media. I'm talking about the school system. I'm talking about all kinds of organizations, labor unions, church organizations, civic organizations. The bigger they are, the higher the chance that there's a great disparity between the leadership and the membership. The membership, just good old folks. They want to be left alone. They want security, of course. They want to get on with their lives. But the leadership has a vision. Whether they know it or not, they're following the vision of Karl Marx or Adolf Hitler. Maybe they haven't read those books. But the people who have programmed their thinking processes and engineered their opinions have read those books. So they have a mission. And that's why it's happening. This is why we have organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, you see, organizations like the Bilderberger Group. You've heard about these. There are more. These are elitist organizations, and underneath each of those, there's a little group of larger organizations that respond to their leadership, and then each of those has another group of still larger organizations that respond. It's part of the organizational structure advanced very clearly by Adam Weishaupt, who I know many of you recognize as the name of the fellow who created the Illuminati many, many, many years ago. Now, it's a big debate as to whether the Illuminati still exists, it has continuity or not. I don't think it's too important whether it has continuity all the way back to Austria and Germany and Adam Weishaupt and France and all that. Whether it has continuity or not, it does exist in one form or another today. And Cecil Rhodes wrote about it. He brought it back to the surface. When Cecil Rhodes died, one of the wealthiest men in the world, he left his whole fortune to the creation of a secret organization. And it's all revealed in his wills. He had several wills. People think of, the Rhodes Scholarship as being just his legacy. Well, the Rhodes Scholarship was merely one, created by merely one of his wills. If you read the other wills, and they are publicly available, you find out that this scholarship was merely a recruiting device to put people into the secret organization that he created. And he believed that the world had to be dominated from behind the scenes by very wealthy, wise people who would make all the decisions for them. It was their obligation to mankind to rule, because if you left people alone, they probably would make bad decisions. In other words, you and I are too damn stupid to run our own lives, and only the wise ones should be allowed to do that. That was the Cecil Rhodes philosophy. And furthermore, he said that we should follow the pattern of Adam Weishaupt and create what they called rings within rings within rings. And that simply means what I mentioned a moment ago, which is that at the center you've got this little group, maybe 3 people, and then they control a larger group, usually called the council, and then there are groups around that called the round tables, and then there are groups around that called political parties and labor unions and things like that. They keep moving out to the masses so that no one within any group knows that that whole group is being controlled by a smaller number within the group. That's the idea. And that's what we find that is the strategy that was used to conquer us. It's important to understand this. It's not just historically interesting. It's vitally important to our survival because, first of all, we have to know how they did it to us. And secondly, we have to look at that seriously and say, is this a strategy that we can use to undo it? And I came rapidly to the conclusion that yes, it is a strategy that we can and must use to undo it, so long as we reject the ethics of that group and just look at the strategies of it. We don't have to advocate collectivism. We don't have to advocate lying, cheating, killing, murdering, stealing, which they do. They say it's all justified because you see in this battle between collectivism and individualism, it's a battle in which the people on the other side, they consider this to be war. War. I mean, literally war. And in warfare, there is only one ethic. The ethic of warfare. There's only one thing that is evil, and that's to lose. Everything else is ethical. It's desirable because victory is the goal. Because victory is how they rationalize in their minds, is how we will make the world better in their minds. If everybody's in a collective beehive and they get rid of all this individualistic instincts to own property and to do things your own way, get rid of all that stuff, it'll be a better world, they think, you see. And so to achieve that higher ideal, these people really are idealists. They don't think of themselves as evil. They think, however, that they're in a battle against evil people like you and me, and we have to be eliminated in some way, anyway, to get us out of the way so they can create this new world order that they have in mind. That's what we're up against. Now, if we can get rid of that mentality, that ethic, and just look at how they did it, it's amazingly simple. What we have to do is get up off of our couches and go out of our living rooms and go into the organizations that people belong to. Individualists usually say, well, politics, not for me. I hate politics. I hate politicians. They're all a bunch of scumbags. You want me to get dirty my hands with politics? And I say, yeah. If you don't, you're going to be ruled by those scumbags. Of course you have to. We've got to get into the groups where people are. I can't expect them to come to us. I mean, this is an amazing group, but you all folks are coming to us because you have this common belief. But the masses out there don't know any of this and have no interest in this. They will respond to their leaders in their political parties and their labor unions, their church organizations. That's all they will do. So we have to be there. We have to be in those organizations, and we have to acquire influence. Now, notice I'm using the word influence now because influence is the power that we seek. It's not the power of a gun. Although if we have influence within the state, that is indirectly a limitation on the power of the gun or how the power of the gun must be used. But our real path to power is through influence in all of these groups and organizations. It's as simple as that. And it's already working. I wish we had time. I could give you some little success stories in which I was able to participate personally in my own community. We're actually able, it's amazingly simple to get people onto the school board, get people into the county board of supervisors, to get people into the city council, if you just go out and try and work together. Now, I'll just close on this by saying working together. People get hung up on that. Oh, and they say, well, you're just forming another collectivist organization. You all want to work together. Organizations are all collectivist, aren't they? No, they're not. There are two kinds of organizations. Most of them are collectivist. At least they're what I would call pyramidal. I mean, that's the military organization. It's the corporate structure. We have the head of it, and then you've got a board of directors, and then you've got managers, middle managers, and down at the bottom, all the rank and file who do all the work. That's how most organizations are, including most of the freedom-fighting organizations to which I have belonged in the past. I decided that that was not a good organizational structure for us. First of all, the principle seems to violate what we believe in, and secondly, it makes us very vulnerable to being eliminated. I mean, if you've got an organization and you've just got one or two people at the head, how easy is that to destroy? Now, they will destroy the head of an organization, not necessarily with wet tactics or wet agenda, like their KGB friends used to call it. In other words, blood. But they'll do it through the media. They'll destroy the reputation of somebody. They'll demonize them. That's the first line of attack. It usually works. And of course, the other method is to starve them economically. They don't have any money coming in. How many groups can match the unlimited money supply produced by the Federal Reserve, for example? I mean, talk about money. They make the stuff, you know. I couldn't read that. How many minutes? Oh, 5. I think it said 5 minutes. Okay, that's about right. Yeah, they make the stuff. So we have to work on manpower and not money. But so the point is, I've got to wrap this up now. The point is that we have to reverse the process by which we've lost our liberties. Now, in third world countries, it doesn't work that way. In third world countries, they still use violence and right out in the open. Everybody accepts it. They were born into that kind of a system. It seems to be, okay, we've got to have one dictator or another. I like this guy better because we ate better under his system than the other guy, you know. It's very primitive. But no, in the Western world, where we like to go to the polls and enjoy the sensation of thinking that we're, when we vote, we like to think that we're, you know, determining our own political destiny. They have to play these mind games on us. They have to lead us. They have to make us think that this was a consensus decision. Even though we as individuals didn't like it, even none of our friends like it, still we turn on the television and we see all these thousands of people out there demonstrating and breaking windows. Why the world has gone crazy. No, the world hasn't gone crazy. That's just 1,000 or 2,000 people who mostly are paid to do what they're doing, and they represent about 0.0000001% of the population, but they're doing a job to convince you and me that the world has gone crazy and we are outnumbered. But they are organized, and we are not. Okay, my point that I was heading to is that people get confused and, oh, you got another organization, more collectivism, and no. The answer to that issue is there's the difference between collective action and collectivism. Collective action that I am advocating is voluntary. Just because I'm an individualist doesn't mean I have to move my piano alone. I can call my friends and say, I need some help. Can you give me some help Saturday? And they either say yes or no. But under collectivism, I call my friends, or if I had friends under collectivism, and I say, this is the commissar speaking. I need my piano moved on Saturday. You will be there. That's the difference between collectivism and collective action. In my view, collective action is much more powerful, and that's the plan we advocate. Well, giving a little intro to that, the best example of all of this unfolding is happening in June of this year. In Bozeman, Montana, we're holding our first annual Red Pill Expo. Everybody's got a red pill, at least in this room. We've all taken the red pill of one kind, but there are many of them. And we think all of them are going to be gathered in Bozeman. And please, if you're interested in knowing more about it, I have these information cards. I'll get down off of these steps without falling, I hope, and I'll be standing sort of there in the middle. I'd like to present you with one of these cards which gives you a little description, a website to get more information. This is the example of Freedom Force in action, because we'll have diverse people from all groups and organizations, people with all these different wild ideas. And we don't necessarily endorse them all. That's not what it's all about. This is not conformity. This is unity without conformity. It's a strange thought, isn't it? And if you want to hear some very interesting stories about the red pill that needs to be taken in the field of education and foreign policy and everywhere, it's all going to be here. And so come to our website, freedomforceinternational.org. And if you like what you see, if you approve of what you see, I hope you will join with us. That's my story. Thank you very much.
Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, G. Edward Griffin.
Right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
In a world where Antifa riots in the city streets, cops rage out of control, and the leader of the free world is a fat-ass casino owner, one event stands alone to make anarchy great again.
I actually love humanity. That is why I'm an anarchist.
Backwards in the building like we the ceiling, we illin'. No matter who find it appealing, I'm here and I got a feeling that we'll be dealing a lot of pain with a penicillin get drilled in your head. That we are monsters and yeah, we come from the slums, and for months we've been pumped, but for once I am now comfortable. I want to grow, I want some more success, and I want to know that greatness can't be rushed, can't be less, so face the fuss. Feel free to hate on us, we lace them up. Dudes, we done paid them up. Keep snakes away from us and safe from us, you might wanna be. Remember when clowns used to make fun of me and that they wanna be me, see me and they run at me. I'm gonna be the greatest, yeah I wanna be, but I am not the one to be the fakest for the sake of being played. I'm here, like I never left, set to hell. Nah, cause I can't just fail, so just prepare your ears, it'll get for real. Okay, from here, we will never take the cell, it's grind time. My mind and my thoughts, my highs and my faults, my wins and my loss. When will I fall off? It's a test for me. You are now listening to Veracity. Yeah.
Fuck the media, fuck the banks, fuck drone strikes, fuck tanks, fuck hunger, fuck war, fuck ignoring of the poor, fuck the left, fuck the right, fuck the government. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.